Candace Owens is in the news again for her support of the Nazis. This has happened a few times before, but the media always forgets and moves on, and it still universally calls her a conservative. This woman is not a conservative, nor are much of the so-called conservative base in the Republican Party. She is a neo-Nazi who routinely uses their arguments and those of the Ku Klux Klan, and anyone defending Owens deserves to be slammed by association. I have a personal history with this topic that makes it difficult to broach, but also more useful, I think. So I'll note what that is and then show you more of what she's saying, and you can judge for yourself whether you're on the side of the Nazi apologists or not. A few years ago, Owens made another of her horrible posts about black men. For context, she has routinely acted to defend police execution of innocents by slamming the character of black men and arguing they are dangerous. None of that is new, but it is disgusting that so many liberals overlook who she is and what she says because of her skin color. She claims only black American culture celebrates its worst people, holding up gangsters and drug dealers as role models, as she believes hip-hop does. You can see from that why Ben Shapiro liked her, another racist chauvinist who hates hip-hop. Yet this country has hundreds of statues of literal slave owners and Klansmen, and she defends those statues as part of the culture she loves so much, and defends the so-called Confederate flag and the right of anyone to wave it. For anyone who, like her, thinks it is history and heritage to wave the Dixie swastika around, I'll remind you that what people call the Confederate flag was never used by the Confederacy. It is an altered variation of the battle flag of one Confederate army and was adopted only during the Jim Crow era as a symbol for the KKK and white supremacy. These ignorant cousin fuckers aren't waving a flag used by the CSA, they're waving a flag first used by cross-burning terrorists decades after the Civil War had ended. Anyway, so this racist swine makes another post asserting that black men are a violent threat to other people and that it's right for white and Asian Americans to fear them. She argues, using language straight out of 4chan neo-Nazi circles, that the only reason we can't talk about how awful black men are is that Jews control the media. Think about that, because I'll come back to her hatred of Jews in a moment. But for now, note that she is using literal KKK and neo-Nazi rhetoric about Jewish and black Americans, so I noted that she dropped her hood. The far right, of course, tried to play their old Dixiecrat era bullshit about the liberals and left being the real racists and saying I sent a Klan hood to Owens because I hate black people. No, you sacks of walking excrement. I said that she dropped her fucking Klan hood because her rhetoric is indistinguishable from that of a 1920s Klan propagandist. And I say that as someone who's read a lot of that material. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a historian of ideas, and I study questions of identity and ideology specifically connected to extremist movements like racism, nationalism, fundamentalism, and the like. Anyway, the right's reaction was predictable. What I naively did not expect was that liberals in the California Democratic Party, especially in Riverside County, decided that I was racist for saying Klan and Nazi rhetoric are bad. You know what I say to those folks? Fuck you. The reason fascism is such a vibrant ideological force on the right in the US today is that for 50 fucking years, liberals and Democrats have rolled over for it, afraid to call it what it is. They labor under some delusion that these are conservatives and can be reasoned with. Folks like Biden defended working with literal segregationists as he wrote legislation with them to target black people with mass incarceration, and people still rallied around him as president and vice president before that. So the racist rot in the Democratic Party is real, though, of course, it is nothing quite as bad as the neo-Nazism in the Republican Party, where people snapping Hitler salutes can run for Congress or address their party conventions. I got involved in politics briefly because I believe that radicalizing liberals into leftists is the only way to defeat fascism, and this has been rising in the US since the end of the Second World War. This is not a new problem. We have to face this shit. I still believe that. I still believe that we need a strong left in order to defeat this because it's what the evidence of a century shows, and the way Democrats treated my critique of Owens shows that really clearly. These liberals use a kind of, well, liberal racism of their own, whereby they assumed the color of one's skin has some bearing on their politics, and that we can't call, say, Jewish supporters of Nazis, or black supporters of the Klansmen. Fuck that noise. There were literal Jewish and Afro-German supporters of Hitler in the 1930s, for fuck's sake. Ideology is not a product of race, and race itself is a social category. Humans are complex and can hold many contradictory and terrible views regardless of one's background. And if you think swastikas and clan hoods are offensive symbols, fucking good! You should, because that's the fucking point. If you can't put the hoods on the right terrorists, though, you are helping those terrorists, and that's what some local Democrats chose to do. I still can't believe I was stupid enough to consider some of those backstabbing bigots my friends. Back to Owens' arguments about Jewish control of the media, since, as you recall, that is apparently the only reason we all can't share her racist hatred of black people. She's been saying that for years. This is a person who defended Hitler publicly with Turning Point USA, and Shapiro's Daily Wire still hired her. She said Jews control Hollywood, and they were fine with that. She said Jews drink the blood of Christians, and they were fine with that. It wasn't until Owens sparred with Shapiro over support for Israel that she got fired. Think about that. The Daily Wire was fine with employing an anti-Semitic neo-Nazi, but as soon as she criticizes Israel and speaks up for Palestinians, she's out. And never mind that the people currently in the Israeli cabinet hold an ideology indistinguishable from Nazism, and that the roots of revisionist Zionist far-right a century ago lie in the fascist movements in the 1920s. Racist ethno-nationalists calling for an ethno-state that excludes and kills others shouldn't be tolerable to anyone, a century ago or now. But let's not get sidetracked with that. Candace Owens, who is, again, the person who's been seen wearing t-shirts with the neo-Nazi slogan, White Lives Matter, thinks Jews control the media and governments of the world, and if you are excusing that, or calling her a conservative commentator instead of neo-Nazi terrorist, you are part of the problem. She defended Hitler's rise to power as fine, saying he only wanted to make Germany great, and that he only messed up by invading other countries. She had no problem, apparently, with concentration camps for socialists, euthanasia for the handicapped, and stripping Jews, Roma, and Afro-Germans of citizenship in the professions. Right-wingers have been lying about those comments for years, but they were already long public when Democrats attacked me for calling her a Klanswoman. And they'll keep denying it, but if after today you still are, then you share her views to some extent. Think about this too. Earlier this year, she came out in support of the Nazis for their targeting of sexologists like Magnus Hirschfeld, who, it should be said, just happens to be Jewish. The Nazis destroyed a pioneering sexology institute that was studying homosexual and transgender people, and did so by calling them perverts and pedophiles. Do you know what Candace Owens calls them? Yeah, perverts and pedophiles, and she attacked the entire field of psychology for it, alongside, by extension, tons of other academic disciplines: neurology, sexology, endocrinology, anthropology, ethnography, sociology, history, and the like, for daring to share the simple facts that being gay or trans is not an illness, but a natural and harmless human variation. By falsely tying queer people to pedophilia, American right-wingers are routinely paraphrasing the Nazis. Owens just made the connection more blunt by defending the Nazi attack on Hirschfeld's work. Owens has now said, just last week on her show, that Americans are lied to about Hitler. She says we don't know anything about him except we're told he's evil. So never mind all those really detailed biographies we have, like those of Ian Kershaw and Joachim Fest. She says that the Holocaust was an attempted ethnic cleansing, and that the real ethnic cleansing happened after the war, when countries across Eastern Europe expelled their German-speaking populations. That's right, kids. She denied the Holocaust and said the real attack was against good German Christians. This is straight-up neo-Nazi rhetoric of the type we've seen on Stormfront and 4chan for years. The Holocaust is real, yo. She also said that the medical experiments by war criminal Josef Mengele were fabricated propaganda. Think about that for a minute. Do you know why we know what the Nazis did? It's not some libtard invention. We inherited 6,000 tons of Nazi documents. That's how we know how many they killed. That's how we know the ways they did it and why they did it. That's how we know the sort of sick torture Mengele engaged in, and Owens is not saying it. Wait, she can't admit this. She's saying it's all made up and that the real bad guys are the Allies who executed poor, innocent German nationalists. It's all just some giant Jewish plot to control the world, she says. It's all just liberal indoctrinations to stop us from seeing all the good that Hitler did, she says. Planned Parenthood are the real bad guys, she says. Fucking think about that. She's whitewashing Hitler for the American right. She's normalizing neo-Nazism in America. She and a ton of these other fuckers are doing this. I have a ton of work by American right-wingers, and their shit is routinely indistinguishable from Nazi and Klan propaganda. By defending her from being called what she is, you are endorsing the same awful takes. You are saying that is acceptable political rhetoric in the United States. Refusing to learn from history, refusing to fight this shit while you still can, it has serious consequences, you arrogant tossers. I will not apologize for calling this rhetoric what it is, and I will not apologize for thinking anyone defending this rhetoric is as much an existential danger to my life and my friends' lives as the Nazis themselves. The Republican base is being radicalized into jackbooted fascists. Wake the fuck up.